Alright, baby, let's ride. So this morning, I'd like to talk about the KTM Juke 390. I've recently seen some videos of the Pinoy rider, this Filipina rider. Yeah, she's a Filipina and she's a rider, which makes her doubly twice as cool, rather. She rides a Juke 390, a KTM Juke 390, and she uses it to travel on the expressways, on the tollways, whether SLEX, NLEX, and so on. And it seems that she gets frustrated by all the questions regarding how her bike is allowed into the tollways when its displacement is below 400 cc. So here in the Philippines, our tollways have a displacement limit for motorcycles. Only motorcycles with displacements 400 cc and above are allowed to enter and traverse the tollways. I've just recently seen her videos on YouTube. The videos were not new, but I've only seen them recently. And I want to talk about the Juke 390 and the expressways. The Juke 390, when it was first sold in the Philippines, it was advertised to be expressway legal, although the first units had trouble entering the expressways because of the displacement issue. The Juke 390, as the name suggests, has a displacement that's basically lower than 400 cc, around 370 or 380, I don't recall exactly. But the distributor eventually fixed that by having LTO register the motorcycle as a 400 cc. So even though if you look it on the internet, on the websites of other countries, you'll see that according to the specs, the displacement of the bike is less than 400 cc. Here in the Philippines, when you look at the ORCR on the registration papers of the bike, it's written there as 400 cc. So it's registered as a 400 cc bike. Thus, the KTM Juke 390 was allowed to enter and travel the expressways, which is fine since many 400 cc bikes are not actually 400cc, they're slightly less than 400cc. The Super 4, the Honda Super 4 for example, the CB400 is actually around 395, 394, I forget which. So technically speaking, they shouldn't also be allowed into the expressway. But they are. They're considered to be big bikes. Anything near or higher than 400cc is considered to be a big bike here in the Philippines, for the most part. Although in other countries it's considered as a mid-sized motorcycle. But here it's considered as a big bike. There's no such thing as a mid-sized motorcycle here. You either have a small bike or a big bike. Small bike, 300cc and below. Big bike, 400cc and above, or near 400cc and above. Trouble basically, well, I wouldn't say trouble, but let's go with that. Trouble, or the issue, became even more complicated with the coming of the Dominar 400, which is basically has the same displacement as the Juke 390. But Kawasaki has initially decided to have them registered according to their actual displacement, which is of course less than 400cc. So if you look at the registration papers, it's around 370cc. That's what's written on the paper. But the problem is Kawasaki has advertised it to be expressway legal. So, needless to say, those who bought the unit or those who managed to get their hands on the unit on a Dominar 400 went on the expressways, and that's when the problems started, or rather got more complicated, or it escalated. And the Juke 390 was, of course, affected or included into the issue, onto the problem. So now, the companies managing the expressways are also considering not allowing the Juke 390 to enter the expressways. Of course, your mileage varies. Some Juke 390 owners are able to enter, some are not able to enter, depending on how they entered, or depending on the day, or depending on the enforcer that's currently in charge. Kawasaki is trying to fix the problem. They're having dialogues with LTO, having dialogues with the the tollway companies, to have the Dominar 400 recognized as a 400cc motorcycle. At least as far as I know, that's still ongoing. So, it's still up to debate whether the Juke 390 and the Dominar 400 are expressway legal. It all depends on who you ask. If you ask SLEX, they allow the Juke 390, they allow the Dominar 400 to enter and travel the SLEX. We ask the NLEX and other tollway companies. You'll get mixed answers. Personally, I say let the motorcycles enter. I mean, they're big enough to be considered as big bikes in the first place, and there's not really a whole lot of them, so it won't really be much of a problem in terms of safety issues, if that's what they're concerned about. I mean, that's what they're saying. Sub 400cc motorcycles are not all that safe on the expressways, on the tollways. Well, that's according to these companies, according to people defending the 400cc limit. And of course, if you're gonna insist that they're sub 400, well then, technically speaking, many of the 400cc motorcycles should not also be allowed. I've had this debate over and over again with my rider buddies, with my friends, and they say no, the CB400 or the Super 4 is very close to 400cc, so even though it has a displacement lower than 400cc, you can actually consider it to be a 400cc because it's just what, 5cc difference, so it's close enough to be considered a 400cc. Well, guess what? Still not a 400cc. I mean, if you're gonna put a cut-off, then if you're gonna have a cut-off displacement, then you better stick to it if you're gonna be technical, or if you're gonna be all technical about it, right? Yeah, right. I say instead that let it be a case-to-case basis. You look at the bike and see if it can be considered as a big bike or not. Of course, there's also the talk about that instead of displacement, let torque or power instead be the basis. But that's a whole different ball game altogether. We're talking about the 400cc limit here, so do we estimate generously? Do we estimate not so generously? Or are we going to be very technical about it? Well, that's it for now.